So, in this conversation, we're going to talk about the topic to heal our suffering completely. We need to resolve it where it crystallizes, which is in our field. And as a starting place for this, I'm going to invite you, Reza, to tell us what the heck that means.
So essentially, the root cause of our suffering is in our field. And what that means is that when we have a problem, whether it's emotional like depression, mental like anxiety, physical like chronic pain, or spiritual like alienation, it all originates in the same place, which is the field. And if we think about it from a physiological perspective, our field is essentially this energy field that permeates around our body, that underlies and regulates our physiology from the deepest cellular level all the way up to our genetic expression, our brain functioning, and it also regulates all of our interconnected bodily systems. So examples of that would be our psychoneuroimmune system, which connects our brain to our immune system and impacts our psychological functioning, our digestive system, our lymphatic system, and our other major bodily systems. But essentially, when we have a trauma, what happens is that it can cause a split in our field or some kind of a blockage or shattering, which in turn dysregulates us on the deepest physiological levels of our being. So, on one level, even though we experience our depression as this psychological crystallization of some kind of a trauma, what's happening is that there's this blockage or some kind of a shattering in our field, which is playing out through our physiology. And for instance, it could be impacting certain levels of chemicals in your, you know, psychoneuroimmune system and going all the way up from your immune system to your brain from your field and causing depression on a cellular level in the brain.
So, here's what I hear you saying. You can please correct me. What I hear you saying is that if we try to heal or cure something on the level it appears to be, which would be the level of matter, whether it's our skin or any of our systems, or to try to manipulate our physiology in any way, shape, or form, we're really not resolving it in the place that would have the greatest power and simplicity. And in fact, the only way you could really heal it, because even though it appears like it's showing up symptomatically in your body, it really has nothing to do with that. So to try to change it in the body really wouldn't be very effective. Have I understood essentially what you're saying?
I think you have, because essentially what you would be doing when you approach it that way is treating what's resulting as a biochemical manifestation of a deeper issue with things like pharmaceuticals or herbs, supplements, and things of that, which impact us on a biochemical level as a start. And by working on that level, you're not going to the root cause of the issue, which is in the field. So it's like putting a band aid on this gaping wound and trying to cover it up, which is working on the biochemical level. But if you go to the field and you work on the root cause, we could, put an analogy as to going into this gaping wound and healing it from the inside all the way up so that you're not just covering it with a band-aid and you're experiencing symptom reduction. You're allowing your body to heal from the inside up.
Okay. So, what about the work that you do? Do you think does that in a way that is very powerful and very simple? Can you tell us about that?
So
The
let's
work that
take
we're doing. Go ahead.
so let's take an example of someone who came in with this paralyzing and crippling anxiety and they had no idea what it was from. This person had a history of pretty severe child abuse. So she was groomed by her best friend's father for several years between ages 11 and 18 and experienced pretty horrific sexual abuse. However, she also was abused by her father at a young age. And 2 days before her session, she came in and she was experiencing a painful sensation in her inner ear and then all these experiences of anxiety and depression after she had seen her father for Thanksgiving. So essentially, in the work we did, her anxiety turned out to be an unconscious remembering of an earlier situation where she was essentially being molested by her best friend's father. And it was built up latent, blocked biochemical and bioenergetic energy that was essentially playing out in her energy field, in her psychoneuroimmune system, impacting her brain functioning and her anxiety levels, we could assume. And in addition to that, the way we approached it was that we went back to the root cause of the issue, and muscle testing indicated that it was around age 13, I believe. And there was an underlying pattern that was there was a psychological pattern that was equivalent to what she wanted to work on, which was her anxiety. So essentially, we used the underlying pattern,
Which was what?
a death wish,
A death wish.
where a part of her was experiencing that she wanted to die.
Mm-hmm.
And we used this to induct her into her body. And she started experiencing all of these really powerful physical sensations, including the painful experience she was having in her ear when she saw her father. And at that point, she said, it's strange I'm experiencing this again because I remember when I was really young, my father hit me in the side of the head and burst my eardrum. And it feels just like that. And essentially, by dropping her into the sensations, that was one of the sensations that became really prominent in her body. And that, along with the other sensations, were a window into this terrifying narrative that she experienced when she was, I believe, 13, where her best friend's father almost raped her, and she was in this very perilous situation where her safety was really threatened. When she went back to this earlier trauma and she approached it in a way where she was witnessing the experience instead of unconsciously remembering it and playing it out on all levels of her being, she was able to master and integrate it in a way that in one session, it turned out that her anxiety was completely connected to this earlier experience. And it went from a 10 and what she described as the most perilous and terrifying anxiety of her life, all the way down to a 0, where she was totally calm and grounded. However, what I would say is that when we work on these issues in this way, we could say that on one level, her anxiety was essentially a physiological manifestation of this earlier experience that she had that was something that she couldn't handle and integrate. And by going back to this earlier experience and helping her handle, integrate, and master it, the anxiety was no longer playing out in terms of her symptom of, feeling out of control and like she wanted to jump out of her skin, so to speak. So if we approach that on this biochemical level, which she had been, and she was on a good amount of psychiatric medication, she was experiencing very little relief from it, and it was making her feel like a zombie of herself. And in that session, she experienced more relief from her anxiety than psychiatric medication had provided her.
Great. So what I understand you saying is she came in with paralyzing anxiety. And what you discovered actually was her anxiety itself was a symptom of something, which was an experience that crystallized when she was an early teenager. And the crystallizing experience was something like, I want to die, or someone who was supposed to love me wants me dead, or something like that. And so when she couldn't handle the situation, that became an organizing principle for her. And when you had her experience that organizing principle, right, by having her say, a part of me wants to die, and feeling what happened in her body, and then choosing to become it, what I hear you saying essentially is she moved from being the one who was reliving the story over and over and over again, or one who was trying to heal or cure it by doing physiological things like taking medication or being shocked or whatever, to just being in a place where she was choosing to experience it, and she was moving from being the one who was in that story to the one who was choosing to be in that story. And then no longer was she that younger her, she was really the her that was hosting or witnessing that one as well as that one. Have I understood?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is when a person can choose to experience whatever is in their field by choosing to focus, bring all their attention and focus on a discomfort, they move from being the one who is reliving something to being the one who is, in a sense, remembering something or becoming whole. And there's no way they can be re-traumatized then, because it's not like we're regressing them to a much younger time. She's just experiencing in the here and now something that is still essentially happening in the here and now. So there's no regression going on. She's just witnessing something that is a living thing that's happening now, but she's just putting herself in a different relationship with it. So essentially she's free, and she can go and say, oh my God, that's what I'm reliving, or that's what happened to me, or I'm now remembering it. I'm not playing it out over and over and over again. Have I understood what you were saying?
Exactly. But I want to go one step further just to add that when you're no longer remembering it, so to speak, by unconsciously playing it out, your physiology is going to be entirely different. Whereas if you're reliving something subconsciously, this previously unmasterable experience, it's playing on your physiology. So we can assume that if her anxiety completely vanished in that one session, it was essentially that layer of the anxiety was essentially just her reliving this experience, and subconsciously whatever was going on for her was manifesting physiologically, and that's why her pharmaceuticals weren't working for that.
Well, I actually know what you're talking about, because I just did a session with a man who had horrendous chronic neck pain, which was also a past life death wish. and he had access to everything. Plus, which would be interesting to you, he has a way of assessing his limbic system. And nothing he ever did calmed down his limbic system. And when he found this past life death wish, where someone was literally wrenching his neck off, literally. I mean, and he was very kinesthetic, so he's like there and he's like going like this and getting his neck ripped off. When he went through that and it changed, he could find no charge in his limbic system at all. He thought it was a miracle because it was none of the things he thought it was.
And the original source of the suffering was in the field, opposed to in the biochemistry, where I'm sure people were working for him, trying to give him relief.
Everybody was working there.
Mm-hmm.
But even the people who weren't working there, because he had energy healers, they couldn't laser it enough, right? Because they couldn't exactly pinpoint what the problem was. Because no one had a good enough diagnostic system. So he would have acupuncture, he would have Reiki, he had done therapy for it, as well as doing energetic kinds of things around the body. I mean, you know, sort of very interesting energetic ways of practicing the body, including acupuncture and energetic network chiropractic. He had tried all this stuff and it wasn't getting it because it wasn't what the problems were. And it was really, they were trying to do it, as you say, from the physiological up. But as soon as he had that one session that lasted 15 minutes, gone.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that amazing?
That's pretty amazing. So what I'm hearing you say is that essentially it's not enough just to work in the field, because we know that even though acupuncture works on our lower levels of our being, it does have trickle-up effects to our field, which can in turn impact our physiology even further.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something you have to do about lasering into what exactly is going on in the field that's impacting our symptom. Can you talk more about that and how you do that?
Sure. I mean, as you know, we do a diagnostic for it and we find out exactly if it's what the person said, if it was the anxiety, or if it was, in this other case, perhaps, let's say it was just her father hitting her and breaking her eardrum. So we could move to the moment, or we could find out if all of those were part of a deeper patterning, in this case, that crystallized around the full experience of, I want to die. And we can exactly laser in. So it's not like we're shining a light on the whole room. It's like we're having her shine a light in exactly what the spot is. And that, I think, is what makes it different, because she is also the one shining the light there, in a sense. We just point her in a direction and say, oh, that's where the problem is, and that's where it crystallized, and you can go and pinpoint it, and you can bring all your attention right there by choosing to focus on that sensation, which is that moment and is that pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I hear you saying, and we're asking about, is how do we know? We find out if it's what the person says, or if there's an underlying pattern, like in this case, you know, not letting go of something, or wishing she were dead, or believing fully that in order to be loved she needed to be dead, so that the anxiety was really part of something else. And we can find out the exact moment at pinpoint. We can find out all these things, and we can find out if she needs anything other than just the most powerful practice, which is to be able to bring your awareness to a dense energy in a high vibrational field, at which point the energy shifts back into its pure form. And that's why she can't find the sensation anymore, because it goes back into its pure form and moves from one, dense energy matter, to the speed of light squared, which is going back into its pure form of who we are in this dimension.